Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40k Universe. I am your host, Gershwan, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the Wordbearer's Legion, as I continue to be surprised by how awesome this chapter was. I've told you guys before in other videos that the Wordbearer's Legion is far from my favorite chapter just because they don't seem very interesting, but the more lore I read about them, the more interested and the more I realize that the Wordbearer's Legion have really good structure to their lore. We're going to be going over some notable campaigns before the Horus Heresy. So before the Wordbearer Legions before the Wordbearer Legion was bad or considered traitorous, chaotic, whatever you want to say, these campaigns really paint a pretty awesome picture of who they were before the Horus Heresy. With that said, let's get into 40 facts about the Wordbearer Legion. Auriok was a city-state of old Earth, buried in the hollowed-out mountain in ancient Terrace, icebound south. It stood throughout the darkness of the old night, weathering the storm of strife for thousands of standard years. The people of Auriok believed that they were the chosen one of ancient Terrace's blighted children, and that they alone would outlast the anarchy that had broken out so many other places. This certainty came from their faith and protection from the spirit of death and life, an ancient pantheon of gods worshipped by the people of Auriok. During the Unification Wars, when the Emperor's eye finally turned to the mountain city, he seemed to have known that soft words and diplomatic overtures would be little of use. The 17th Spacemarine Legion, the Imperial Heralds, came to the city and gave it a choice: kneel and accept the Imperial truth, or be destroyed. The priest kings of Auriok did not even hear the message before they gave their answer. Fire met the Imperial Herald's transport, and as it fell to the ice plains, the 17th Legion began their attack. Marco bombers came out of the snow-filled sky, and the mountain cracked under a rain of seismic charges. On the mountain's flanks, siege tanks coughed shell after shell into fractures in the rock, breaking them wide open. Behind the wind came the gray armored warriors, advancing in a relentless drumroll of gunfire and hiss of flame. After 3 solar hours of battle, the remaining populace was a huddled flock, crammed into the central cavern. With every other tunnel and cavern district wiped clean of life, the 17th Legion halted, sealing the ways in and out of the central cavern. As the survivors waited, in their silence, they wondered what fate awaited them. Their answer came in a rain of shattered stone and red fire, as the Ashen Circle descended on the last survivors like comets flung from a destroyed heaven. All burned, none were spared, and when it was done, the 17th Legion overloaded the geothermal power plant beneath the mountain, causing lava to fill the caverns, swallowing the stone idols, and exploding the city-state from the wounds in the mountain's flanks. So fell Auriok, and the message of its death carried across ancient Terra and beyond. Faith in a false god would bring only ruin and ashes. The world of Melkai was a planet on a trailing edge of the galactic rim, which had retained many of the technological marvels of mankind's lost golden age of technology. Star docks ringed its orbits and moons. The electric light bathed its cities, which rose in metal and stone from plains, mountains, and blue sea shores. Winged craft skimmed its atmosphere, while gene crafts and bio-cleansing technology allowed much of its population to live for many Terran centuries. On the surface, Melkai was a jewel of light, still burning in the night, but darkness coiled at the heart of its perfect realm. A parasite alien race held control over Melkai. Accounts describe these creatures as clouds of shattered black crystals when glimpsed without their host. Unable to exist outside of biological sentient hosts, these nameless creatures ruled Melkai through a class referred to as the Ascended. Wearing the faces of human men and women, the Ascended ran their domain with a single purpose guiding their every action: the maintenance of a pool of future hosts. Such was the Melkai world's ingraining devotion to their parasitic masters that when the Great Crusade found them, they rose up to resist the invaders who sought to free them. Initially, the Imperium's expeditionary fleets encountered heavy resistance, and the Armada withdrew with a small number of human captives. From these captives, the nature of the Melkai's enslavement soon became clear. Knowing that they could not capture the planet, the Grand Marshal of the expeditionary fleet sent an astropathic message asking for aid. When that aid came, it was more than the Grand Marshal could have ever dared to hope. Lorgar himself came to Melkai with 8 full chapters of the 17th Legion. Having talked to the captives in person, the Lord Aurelian is said to have given a single order: light the first fire. Perhaps out of fear that their human cattle might one day turn on them, the Ascended dwelt in a chain of 9 orbital cities far above the planet's surface. Approaching without power, the war barge Castigator slid toward Melkai from its system's edge. Once it was deep behind the planet's sphere of defenses, it fired its payload, a Nova Shell and a cluster of Melta and Plasma-tipped torpedoes, timed to strike at the same moment. Revealing itself after launching its payload, the Melkai warships turned to chase the Wordbearer's vessel. Meanwhile, Lorgar's fleet met them. The void battle lasted a single hour, and at the end, the Melkai ships were scattered fragments of debris. The Wordbearers moved past the orbital cities to land their armored cargoes of Astartes upon the planet's surface. 5,000 Wordbearers and 100,000 Imperial Army auxiliaries fell on the planet in a single drop. Even in the face of such might, the Melkai resisted. Several millions died in the first hour of engagement. Then, just as the defenders reached into their reserves of will, Lorgar attacked the remaining cities of the Ascended. Boarding companies in Astartes gunships punched through the turret fire and armor, and began to advance through the cities. Throughout the assault, the Ascended called on their forces to resist, their voices reaching across the planet on single waves. Lorgar made no move to stop the signaling voices, but his assault companies reached the orbital city's plasma reactors. Then, one after another, the Ascended's voices were silenced, and a chain of explosions ringed the besieged world. In a single moment, the people of Melkai knew that their masters were gone, and they were facing a power greater and more terrible than any that they could have ever dreamt of in their wildest nightmares. Most of the Melkai surrendered at that moment. The rest fell few days later. A decade after, Melkai was a world faithful to the God Emperor. Half a century later, 500,000 of its sons and daughters would come to Ultramar with the name of alien gods on their lips and aid the Wordbearers in the assault upon Calth and other worlds within the realm of Ultramar. During the Great Crusade, the world of 4710, also known as Kur, was brought into imperial compliance approximately a Terran century before the events of Isstvan III at the outset of the Horus Heresy. The beautiful capital city of Kur, known as Monarchia, called the Perfect City by the Wordbearers, was built by the people of Kur at the direction of the Wordbearers to demonstrate their faith and devotion to the God Emperor. Nearly 6 decades after being brought into imperial compliance, some 43 years before the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, the 8th Legion, the Ultramarines, utterly destroyed Monarchia on the order of the Emperor as an example of both Primarch Lorgar and his Wordbearers, that violation of the imperial truth through the encouragement of the continued error of religious faith and the spread of ideological doctrines would not be tolerated. This action crushed Lorgar and his Space Marines and led them to seek out new gods more worthy of their worship, the ruinous powers of chaos. 4716 was the first world brought into imperial compliance after the rebuke of the Wordbearers by the Emperor on the world of Kur. The lost human world had at first rejoiced to be reunited with their long-lost brethren from the stars. For over 4,000 Terran years, they had thought themselves alone in the universe until the arrival of the 17th Legion. They had greeted the Wordbearer envoy with open arms, gazing upon the immense gray-armored Astarte warriors with awe and reverence. Upon their return to their orbiting vessel, Captain Corferon commented that the people of 4716 were irreversibly corrupt worshippers of a heathen deity. The humans of this world appeared to venerate a large profane titanic colossal known only as the Stormlord. Since the Emperor had rebuked their Primarch and the entirety of the 17th Legion for their slowness in bringing worlds into imperial compliance and violating the imperial truth, the Wordbearers could not again refuse the will of the Emperor. The 17th Legion did not have the time necessary to convert the population of 4716 to the imperial truth, and since their profane beliefs were deemed incompatible with the Imperium's orders, the world of 4716 would have to be purged. Less than 24 hours later, more than 190 million people were dead. over 98% of the doomed world's population. Only one city survived the 12-hour orbital bombardment, in which entire continents disappeared in flames. This was the seat of the planet's governance, and center of its blasphemous worship. The world's profane palace temple was protected by a bubble of energy. 5 full word-bearer companies were deployed to the planet's surface to finish the job, battling through the masses of artificial intelligent war machines unleashed by the desperate defenders. Captain Sword Talgron and his 34th Company spearheaded the assault and eventually forced their way inside, while taking more casualties than initially expected. Within the dome of the temple were gathered hundreds of human survivors, as well as the political leaders of the people of 4716. Sword Talgron spoke with the head priest and discovered that, much to his shock, these people worshipped the Emperor as a god, and they wanted to join the Imperium. Sword Talgron felt guilty for the genocide that had been committed by his legion because of this misunderstanding. Informing the Primarch of what had transpired, the first Captain Corferon and a cadre of 100 Terminators teleported to the surface, materializing inside the dome, their weapons trained on the human worshippers. Then Lorgar and First Chaplain Erebus materialized, making their presence known. The Primarch dismissed the fact that the people of this world worshipped the Emperor as a god, and that they had somehow obtained a copy of the Lectitio Divinatus, scribed by Lorgar himself. Lorgar informed Talgron that he had been penning a new magnus opus, something that would make everyone forget the now obsolete Lectitio Divinatus. This would be the profane book of Lorgar. The people of 4716 were condemned, for ignorance was no excuse for violation of the imperial truth. The Primarch explained to Captain Talgron that sometimes sacrifices had to be made, and with a signal to his first captain, the survivors of 4716 were massacred in a hail of Stormbolter rounds. During the so-called Pilgrimage of Lorgar, the spiritual quest undertaken by the Primarch Lorgar and his 17th Legion to commune with the Dark Gods, the Wordbearer's pursuit of any scrap of information that could be found on the primordial truth or the nature of the place where gods and mortals could mingle, ultimately led to the 1,301st Expeditionary Fleet to the Cadian system, near the largest permanent warp storm in the galaxy, later known to the Imperium as the Eye of Terror. The Wordbearers laid anchor over an unknown world. They later made planetfall on the newly discovered planet, which they designated 130112. There, they discovered the chaos-worshipping population. It was on Cadia that Lorgar first met Ingathal, a demon prince of chaos who was appointed by the ruinous powers as a guide for Lorgar and inducted the naive Primarch into worshipping chaos. This would lay the seeds of setting in motion the events that brought on the Horus Heresy nearly 4 decades later. And those were 40 facts about the Wordbearers Legion. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There's going to be a part 3 where we go over the Horus Heresy and what the Wordbearers did during the Horus Heresy. Spoiler alert. They didn't do anything good, but subscribe to the channel to get that. And just a quick question for you guys. When we were talking about the story of the, I think they were the Ascended, so that alien, they called them parasites, that alien parasite that was enslaving that human population. What I found interesting, or that was probably one of my favorite stories of this lore, because it seemed that the humans were having a much better life than they were after Imperial compliance. They were living for hundreds of years. The technology that was there was pretty advanced because of the Dark Age of technology, and then all of a sudden the Wordbearer showed up, or the Imperium showed up, and they made things worse. So I thought that was pretty interesting. There was a commenter long ago that asked if there was a possibility that there was a planet out in the galaxy that would have survived the Dark Age of technology, survived from the Dark Age of technology. So they survived the Age of Strife, they survived the Great Crusade, and they survived up until now. If you create a lore based around that, use this story as an example, because I think if there ever existed a planet that was technologically advanced to the point of the Golden Age of technology or the Dark Age of technology, once they got into contact with the Imperium, it would be bad. So what you would have is a really cool story where they're not really traitors, they're not really chaos, but in the eyes of the Imperium, they are. But the Imperium is actually the bad guys, because the Imperium is trying to push down their technological advancements. Well, really, they'll be trying to steal the technological advancements. But use that for your lore. If you do, let me know where you put your lore, and I would love to check it out. Again, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.